Welcome to another episode of We Don't Die. I'm your host, Sandra Champlain, author of the international best-selling book called We Don't Die, A Skeptic's Discovery of Life After Death. And just a reminder, my home base is wedon'tdie.com, where you can always find great things like medium classes and our free Sunday gathering, which is an inspirational, empowering service that has a medium demonstration included. There's so much more. It's all at wedon'tdie.com. Now, onto our episode today. To find meaning and purpose in our lives, it can often begin with us experiencing a lot of pain and perhaps even hitting rock bottom. We have a guest today that shares in that journey. We have Booboo Garcia, who I met not long ago when he interviewed me on his Broader Lens podcast. His YouTube channel has close to 300 videos, and if you're empowered by my show, I know you'll appreciate the conversations that he has with his guests. Now, he's heard plenty of stories himself about near-death experiences and reasons to believe in the afterlife, but he himself has had some very significant transformative experiences. So we want to find out all about him today, his experiences, why he believes in the afterlife, and turn you on to another podcast, which is great. Broader Lens podcast. Boo Boo, my friend, welcome to We Don't Die Radio.
Sandra, thanks for having me. What an honor.
Oh, well, that's how I felt just 3 months ago when you interviewed me. It's great because, well, first of all, it's wonderful to interview someone who's had a great experience, but to interview an interviewer who's not only had experiences and has reasons that you're doing what you're doing, but then you've also got the gift that you've heard some amazing stories. So I'd love to share your story and love to share your podcast and just what you're up to. You're a kind-hearted person. So tell us about you. Where in the world are you, first of all?
I'm in Arizona, Goodyear, Arizona, and I love it here. I'm from California, Los Angeles originally, but yeah, I'm loving it here. I grew up in Los Angeles, so
All
big
right.
difference.
Yes, big difference. Tell us about you and your story. And I had said at the beginning, out of the toughest times comes our these transformations. I know you've been through and maybe are still going through things as we all are, but tell us about you and some of your past and what got you into creating this podcast.
Yeah, I'd love to. It's kind of I feel like I lived different lives in this one lifetime. It's crazy. Um, you remember the Love Boat?
I
Well,
do.
that's where I grew up, basically. I grew up in the port of Los Angeles, right there in San Pedro, California, where a bridge divides San Pedro to Long Beach. Um, and Some people call it the ghetto by the sea. I grew up in the hood, and I had a rough upbringing. But I realized today, without the mud, there's no lotus flower, right? And
Right.
I My parents were both gang members. My dad was shot 5 times in two different occasions. He was stabbed in the face. He had like a literally had a scar face, literally. And my mother was sliced in the back over 50 times. I used to see her fist fight as a kid walking me to school, and just had a lot of violence in my life. My house was a party place. Both parents were addicts and alcoholics, and I just remember certain men were walking our little apartment, and the energy would change. They had like this respect, and that I wanted, I felt I didn't have. And I remember when they would walk in the room, the apartment, I things of the energy will shift a little bit. And I remember thinking, I want what they have, you know. And it's that bad boy image. I'm already putting up a persona without realizing it, right? So yeah, I just had I've seen a lot of people party. I thought that was life, having the right chick and partying. And yeah, I just that was learned behavior. My dad would beat me, and I remember thinking when I get older, I'm gonna kill this guy. That was the thoughts in my little brain as a young boy, because he would whip me with the vacuum cord. And my dad loved me. I know my parents both loved me, but they did the best they could with the tools they had. If they would have known better, they would have done better. And I learned that through, learning how to live on a spiritual way of living later down the line. But at the time, I didn't know how to comprehend that stuff. It was very, it was childhood trauma. My dad would be in and out of prison, and when he's gone, my mom's sleeping with another man, and I didn't know how that affected me until I got later in my life, until I found the 12-step community. Um, I'd be outside playing with the kids in the alley around the neighborhood. And I just remember I felt like the monsters. My family was the monsters. Why can't I just have a regular family? Why do I have to have the monsters, And next, my dad's friends are arguing in front of us as little kids, and someone's getting stabbed. That's kind of the way I just didn't know how to comprehend that kind of stuff. So I'd run to the school playground, and the co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous once said I had to be the first at everything because in my perverse heart I felt the least of God's creatures. So I always felt less than. I didn't feel lovable. I didn't feel good enough. This already started to develop at a young age, and so I had to be the first at everything. You tell me to play basketball, you're picking me first. Tell me to play football, I'm the quarterback. You tell me to play baseball, I'm going to hit a home run with the broken leg, left-handed. That's just the type of mentality I developed, and that's from the effects of trauma, right? Because I needed you to want to respect me and feel like I'm important. So I already put up this persona, and that was the story for a long time. Yeah, yeah, just a lot of chaos going on. I remember going to my bathroom in the middle of the night. My house was the party place, and then there's my family picture with that song "White Lines" playing really loud, and then there's some white lines on the family portrait. So that's kind of the upbringing I was brought up in, and like I said, my parents did the best they could with the tools they had, and I know that now. I don't have to be a victim, but can see that. Um, I did. I was. I can't look at my environment and see how it affected me. And I didn't do that till later down the line. But I remember sixth grade comes around and my mom says, "Your dad left us." In my little mind, I thought, wow, if I'd have been a better son, if I would have been more lovable, he would have stayed with us. Because my little brain doesn't know how to process that stuff. And as much as I hated my mother and father, next thing you know, that same neighborhood that they're running around with, I get jumped into. I put a friend request in, and it's not on Facebook. It's in the streets. And what happens when you put a friend request in the neighborhood is they surround you and they beat you up for several minutes, and then you get jumped into the gang. And that's exactly what happened to me. And now I'm starting to do things I don't want to do. And I think there was a little part of me like, if I would have just okay, if I just live like them, maybe they'll want to be like they'll love me more. um and I remember seventh grade comes around. There's a summertime house party, and when I was younger, I took a sip of the alcohol because there was bottles left around in my household all the time, and I spit it out, and couldn't comprehend why they drink this horrible stuff. And I think there was a cigarette butt in there with a little bit of beer, and I spit it out, right? So when seventh grade comes around, there goes that same liquor, and I don't want that stuff. It tastes nasty. I've tasted it before, but a cup of one of those little red cups from the kegs, where they filled it up and they gave it to me, and I didn't want to look like a chump, so I just pounded it. I pounded another one, and I got drunk. I drank tequila and Budweiser, and that slot machine mind, worrying about who my parents are and all these worries, everything just stopped. And I experienced what Carl Jung says, spiritus contra spiritum in Latin, which means spirits against spirits. The spirits of alcohol help this spiritual malady that's in here, this conscious, this brokenness, this separation, this disconnection with self. It cured that for a brief moment. I call it alcoholic yoga, because yoga means union with God, right? And I experienced that union with spirit for that brief moment, and next I'm passed out doing all these crazy yoga poses. But yeah, that's where it all started.
Incredible. And you yourself became an addict, right? To alcohol,
Yeah.
and eventually found the 12-step program. First of all, let me just send you and the inner child giant hug. Our parents, I know what you say, do the best they can with what they have. They might have grown up the same way. You just never know. So kudos to you for finding that forgiveness and and understanding, not being a victim to it, even though you were, but
Yeah.
now empowering yourself. So kudos to you. And I know just what you mean about being a little kid, not good enough, and being on opposite sides of the spectrum. You got to be the very best, and all those kind of things. So what happens next in your story? Because I know there's a rock bottom coming, just by what you've told me before. And that you found your own spirituality. And I think you've had a couple of interesting experiences too, right?
Correct. Yeah. And ever since I was a kid, I always remembered like I had glimpses of past lives. It was crazy because I remember seeing Indiana Jones, for an example, and I seen that the way they made up that environment, and I remember I lived there before. Like I had this inner knowing, or I've seen Star Wars, and I've been there before, or even those old kung fu movies on the regular TV back on the weekends, and they're being translated into English. And I remember I lived there before, right? So I always had like this inner knowing. I was into like aliens and Bigfoot and the afterlife, and I felt like I lived past lives. Like I knew that, but that got pushed down from all the the persona, that all those layers of the persona. But yeah, I started running around with this neighborhood, and I started experiencing a lot of the violence in the 90s, a lot of murder, a lot of my friends dying, and I don't know how to cope with that stuff, right? I don't know how to express my feelings. I was never taught that stuff, and so I'm pushing it down with alcohol. I think the deepest part of any addiction is there's pain underneath there, and I'm trying to medicate myself, numb myself with, and it became a my body could do it better than my mind. My body could take me to a drink better than my mind, and my drinking escalated. My alcoholism escalated. I try to be a normal father. I try to have a family, and I don't know how to do that correctly, and I like how you brought up, about the victim. It's important to know that you may have been a victim to certain circumstances, but don't get caught up in victimhood. Where by the end of my drinking, I'm walking into Alcoholics Anonymous speaking victimese. And I'm a victim. I have blame throwers on my shoulders, and if you had my life, my parents, my upbringing, you'd be just like me. And I was stuck in victimhood until I had that awakening. But yeah, so my dad comes back into my life, and I'll do it as fast as I can. My dad comes back into my life. I'm about 20 years old. He's changed, man. He removed his teardrop tattoo. He got it lasered off. He he stopped. He got sober. He stopped using drugs. And one day he calls me and asks if I go to the emergency room with him. I take him to the emergency room, and he laid out his life. He apologized for this, apologized for that, explained this, explained that, and I'm not sure why he's doing this. I can't comprehend it at the time until I get sober. Um, but I'm like, okay, Dad, okay, and Sunday comes, and my dad's a reborn again Christian, and I just get home from partying all night, and he's knocking on my door and wanted me to go to church with him. And I said, you know what, Dad, come back after church and we'll hang out. Hoping he didn't come back. He comes back, and next thing you know, he wants to go. Or he was a mechanic, so he wanted to work on my El Camino I'm restoring. I talked him into going to the cliffs, where his little brother, who's a couple years older than me, um, who was trying to stay out of trouble, who was in and out himself of jail and prison, was flying a remote control airplane. 10 minutes in, this remote control airplane gets stuck. We could see it over the cliffs. We try to get it. My dad walks a couple more steps down, and he falls off the cliff. And I just seen all the dirt. I seen all the dirt just going flying around, and then I run about a mile away. There's a staircase. I ran down the staircase to the rocks. I ran all the way back to my father, and he's compressed against the rocks, and he's gone. And that teardrop that was removed had a real tear, was replaced with the real tear. I seen it, and I grabbed him. And as I'm grabbing my father, I had you gave me the wording, a shared death experience, which I didn't know about before. I called it tapping into his consciousness, because I tapped into his consciousness for a brief moment, and I was outside of my body, and I could see the whole scene. I could see the helicopters, the policemen, the firemen, people looking over, a few people looking over the cliffs, and I seen me and my uncle holding my dad, and I'm crying.
I am so sorry for that experience. Oh my gosh.
Thank you.
Oh.
But
I
I
mean,
feel
we
like
know
it
your
was.
dad's with you. We know we live on, but in the moment, years after, the grief, all of that is very real. So, oh,
Well,
okay.
yeah,
Thank you.
oh no, thank you. And I used to challenge my father with his scriptures, and so we would go back and forth at times when he would preach to me, but I think that was his way of showing that he's not dead. Like, son, I'm not dead. We don't die. Like I couldn't comprehend it fully at the very at right there and then, um, and 2 weeks later, because I didn't know how to deal with that stuff. I started drinking more. 2 weeks later, my brother-in-law gets shot right in the head, and my 5-year-old niece, no longer has a father. And the last words he was said and was, I have a child, and they shot him. He was still in his paramedic outfit. He was running around in the streets with me, but then he tried to change his life, and he was trying to become a fireman. The next day, after his death, he got hired in the Sacramento Fire Department. But he's dead. He got murdered. And and from that point on, I really hit the dark night of the soul. I hit bottom, and I was in a very dark place. I had a family I was so ungrateful for. I can say I love my family all I want, but I could look at my actions, because those are my true belongings, and my action says something else. Um, my last one last night, my to make perfect example. um, I had a home cooked meal at home, my daughter watching TV, and I'm jumping out the window because I need to have a drink. I meet these girls, and I tell them who I am. They go, "Hey, aren't you so and so married to so and so?" And I said, "No, wrong guy." Because there goes our after party, right? We go to the liquor store after hours, we buy liquor, and we're stocking up our cars. Girls had their car, we had my friends had our car, and I have a family at home, and I'm doing all this stuff, right? And as soon as I get in the cars, there's these guys playing that gangster rap music back in the 90s, and they start saying stuff to us, and "Don't you know who I am" kicks in, the ego. And I start walking to them. My friend grabbed me by the shoulder and says, "We're in a different neighborhood. We don't got any guns. We got with these females. We got this liquor. Let's get out of here." So I jump in the car. We take off. As soon as we get in the car, that girl that I lied to earlier on, she jumps in the car with my friend sitting on passenger. He goes with the girls. She comes with us. We go to the red light. They throw rocks at us, and the "Don't you know who I am" kicks back in. And I thought anger was courage, being angry and courageous, but that's really a form of fear. And went towards these guys, and "Don't you know who I am" mentality. And I walk up to like 10 guys without even processing, because I'm driven by anger and fear. And then "Don't you know who I am?" And as tough as I thought I was, they pull out two guns and they start shooting at me. And next, I'm running back to the cars, and I'm running back to the where I was, and these bullets are flying in slow motion, and that girl that I lied to gets shot right in the head and dies on my friend's lap. So when I first read the book, the AA book, and it says selfishness, self-centeredness, we think is the root of our troubles, I started crying. And I didn't cry. I held that in for a long time until I got sober. Um, we took her body to the hospital, and you know talked to the police and all that stuff. And I numbed myself down one more time, and I eventually lost my family. It got really bad. I hit bottom. I hit rock bottom. I get home one day, and there's my happy home. It's empty, and my stuff's thrown around, and there's a family portrait broken. And my best thinking at the time is, yes, now I can do whatever I want, because she doesn't appreciate me, right?
Right.
So I'm partying. I'm like "Tears of a Clown," that old oldie song, making everyone laugh, but deep down inside, I'm hurting. And it got worse, and it got worse, and it got worse. I went from wanting to hang around with me, people wanting to hang out with me, to I don't want nothing to do with that guy anymore. I'm homeless. I don't know what to do. A couple of days before I had my awakening, I put a 38 to my head, but I couldn't do it because I see my daughter's eyes, just in a really dark place. November 13th, 2009, I blacked out one more time. And I totally believe in a entity attachments, especially when you're drinking. But because I would black out, and I don't even know what's going on. But anyways, I blacked out. I have a big mouth when I drink. I think I'm Tupac, Bruce Lee, and Boy George all put together. I'm
Oh
just playing with
no.
the Boy George. I'm just playing with the Boy George part. But no, I'm drunk, and I start a big old thing, and there's a shooting. There's a shooting, and someone got shot, and it wasn't me. And I woke up that day, November 14th, 2009, and I woke up into a different state of consciousness. Buddha talked about nirvana. Nirvana means to blow out or extinguish. And for a brief moment, the five sense reality was gone. I wasn't identifying with my mind and body. And I had a brief moment of relief, a brief moment of calmness, but it was like darkness. I was in darkness, but there was nothing. It was in a state of nothingness, and I wasn't in worry or nothing. I was beyond the mind. And I will, as fast as that happened, that egoic flame turned off. It turned back on like a magic candle. And next, I'm in a lot of worry. I'm scared. I'm shaking. I don't know what to do. And my buddy knocks on the door, who let me stay in his apartment until he got it back from his rehab. I didn't know he got home a couple days ago, and he's knocking on the door wanting me to go to a 12-step meeting. And my first reaction was Scooby Doo. Um, I didn't know what to do. I didn't never even heard of the 12 steps or, how to get sober. But I followed him, and that's where all the change started to happen. I started having different types of awakenings and different types of mysticism come to me. I had mystics come to me. It's weird. Paramahansa Yogananda was one of them. I was never raised with that stuff. And this guy was guiding me for my first 5 years. And there's so many stories with Paramahansa Yogananda. It's crazy. But they taught me how to love myself.
How did they come to you? Was it in the dreams? Was it when you're waking up in the morning?
I
How
had it.
did the visions come?
I had them come to me in dreams, like they were there talking to me, and I never really dreamed. But I also had Yogananda. I felt like this presence following me everywhere. I remember about 1 year into my sobriety, I went to a church trying to, I'm trying to different routes on spiritual path, and I went to sat down in a church. And no offense to anybody that goes to church, this I respect everyone's beliefs, but Yogananda told me they know not what they preach. And he's talking about the pastor. Um, I don't remember what he was saying at the time, but that's what he said. And I went to the gift store right there and I asked him for a Neil Donald Walsh book, and they laughed at me. Oh, that's on the no buy list. We don't sell that book. Um, and it was a big church. And I have another experience with Neil Donald Walsh, but who I'm interviewing next Tuesday, which is crazy. But yeah, but Yogananda, I started this Yogananda guy kept popping up everywhere I'd go. I tried a Unity Church, and next, there's a guest speaker, a guest reverend from San Diego coming up to Torrance, California, and he's speaking about Yogananda. It's like everywhere I went, I think it was Yogananda trying to tell me who he was. And eventually found his self-realization fellowship and Kriyananda, the Ananda fellowship, which his disciples started. And I met his disciple, one of his disciples, two of his disciple, original disciples. And and I just started getting onto the path and learning about different aspects of spirituality and religion and really incorporating them all, like looking at the universal truth.
And you said you learned to love yourself. Can you talk about that? Because that's a
Oh yeah.
difficult one.
Yeah, going through the 12 steps, they taught me how to talk about that my look at my life and how it's unmanageable. I'm powerless over alcohol. Then they told me to find my own higher power in step two. And one of the lines that in the step two process is it says we found the great reality deep down within us, and I could buy onto that. Within me, the power is within me. God is within me, regardless of what you call it, right? So I bought into that. I became willing to believe. In step three, it's about turning your will and your life over to the care of a higher power or God. Um, for me, it's just using the proper use of the will and utilizing your will properly. Having be more mindful, learning how to pray and kind of get heart centered. And then when I got into the fourth step, that's where everything started to change. I started to question stuff, question my life, look at everything, everyone I had a resentment towards or yucky feelings towards, and I put them on stage with myself. And just really developing deeper insight and understanding, and seeing how that affected me when I put them on stage and I sat with the crowd, and how what I don't want the crowd to perceive this person acting out towards me. So that stuff started to change me, just having looking at it from a different, Wayne Dyer says when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And I'm able to look at it different angles and question how that affects me. How does that hurt me? Why do I have this belief about myself? Why am I so worried about what they think about this interaction with this person? Or why does this person hurt my feelings? Just questioning stuff. And I started to get answers. And I started to look into my parents' life. And my mom came from a broken home. My father did too. And they may have dark secrets. My mother, being a female out there, and she probably has some rough secrets. And when I started to have that understanding, and Thich Nhat Hanh is a big influence for me. He taught me how to love, and it's all through understanding, because understanding is love's other name. And I started to really look through the lens of the heart versus the conditioned mind or ego.
Wow. So, a couple of things to share. One, those 12 steps are powerful for anybody. Anybody. They really are incredible. And Boo Boo, I just want to acknowledge you for picking yourself up and where you are today. And I want you to let it in, because I know if somebody says something good about me, I deflect it. But what I see in you, first of all, everything that you've been through, as painful as it has been, has brought you here today. I don't mean on this show, I mean your podcast. And that you're about to interview Neale Donald Walsch, who's huge, mega. I've been moved by conversations with God and his other books as well. Who you are for the world is someone who gives back so much more than you've received. Nobody wants to hear a story from somebody who's, say, always been wealthy and is teaching you how to get rich. No, we want somebody who was rock bottom, pulled themselves up, worked hard for everything they had, is real, is down to earth, and just wants to give back. And that's who you are. You're selfless. I know you're still human and you got your stuff. We all do. But for all the work that you have done, and I'm sure all the listeners and viewers will agree, we want to just give you a big hug and also give you so much gratitude, because life is tough and there's different degrees of what human beings go through. And if you could be that little kid in the worst of worst conditions and now be a thought leader with the Broader Lens podcast, interviewing people about spirituality and finding our own truth and that it's inside. That's you. And don't discount it because I know that ego's still there. It's there with all of us. But just keep stepping up and keep giving and keep looking within. I'm incredibly grateful that we're spending this time together. So thank you.
Thank you, and I appreciate that, because I do want to block those comments away. My ego, right?
You're
So
not
I
going
am
to.
letting you
It's going to
know.
be there. We can make friends with it. Thank you for sharing, but I'm not going to listen to you right now.
Yeah.
You know?
You know what I want to share in the fourth step,
Yes.
because I was just talking about it, is when I hear someone talk about a near-death experience and they talk about that life review, I'm like, I did that in the fourth step. I learned how it affected everybody. I looked at all my actions had an effect on everyone. We're all connected, regardless if we don't believe that or not. And everything we do affects the next person, and we can't truly heal ourselves until we're all healed, And I think I woke me up to that oneness of life, going through the fourth step. That was my near-death experience, a life review
And
on
it's
this
powerful
life.
to have it while we're still here, isn't
Yeah,
it? Yeah.
yeah.
And every day before we go to bed, we can have that life review and look back and take an assessment and where we need to go, who we need to talk to, all of those things, and forgive ourselves as well. So, next, what happened? Because now you've got a pretty big YouTube channel, lots of videos on there. You've interviewed some amazing people and more yet to come. And you are a giver. You're sharing really good stories, letting people share their passions. And you're a fantastic listener as a host. How did that develop?
Thank you. I appreciate that. I had like something told me to do this like 3 years ago, and I was fighting it because that not good enough still in me pretty strong at times. Um, but last August, I just said, you know what, I'm going to do it. I keep hearing it come to me to start a podcast, and I walked through my fears and I did it. I'm not really tech friendly. I don't know how to use a computer really well, and all this and edit stuff and all that, make logos and thumbnails and all. But I learned. I walked through my fears and I learned. And I was told in my own intuition that yeah, that I need to do this. Next, like fast forwarded, like you said, Neil Donald Walsh is who I didn't even share about the experiences I had early on with him. Um, and then I have him Tuesday, and I have Marianne Williamson on Friday.
Oh my
Isn't that
goodness.
crazy? And I'm nervous. Super
Congratulations.
nervous. Yeah,
They're
and I
just
think
people, just like you and
yeah,
I. Be in the
yeah. I
present
guess
moment, listen,
you're right.
right? Because I go through the same thing too. And people get nervous sometimes to interview me, and I'm thinking, I'm just me, right? They're just them. So just listen. Yeah. But I'm proud of you. So, everyone, make sure you go to YouTube and look for Broader Lens Podcast. Whenever you are watching this, um, I don't know when you're watching it, but it'll be on there. Those interviews with Marianne Williamson and Neil Donald Walsh. So cool. Okay, back to you. That was a little commercial break for you.
I
Back to
appreciate that.
you, though, because in such a short time, I mean, you've got some incredible guests. You've figured out the technology. It's, we always learn, there's always more to learn.
Yeah.
You listen and tell us some of the stories. People come to my show because they want to believe in the afterlife. We have a lot of people here experiencing grief. What have you learned from your guests? And I don't know if you've had an experience with your dad after he's passed or anything. Do you have some stories or your favorite stories of the afterlife?
Well, yeah. I was there was a medium in when I was in Cincinnati. I went to this convention, and it's a lot of people. It was like a couple hundred people easily, and people were walking by, and all the top like mediums, they were pretty lined up with people, and it was a waiting list. So I walked by this one couple, and no one was around them, and somebody told me to ask this lady to give me a reading. Well, I get a reading, and I wanted to talk to my father, and my father pops up, but as soon as he pops up, my friend Nicole Lindy, who's another medium, she talks about what she called that so I forget, but anyways, um my brother-in-law who got shot in the head, he comes right in. He wants to talk to me. He's like anxious to give me a message, and I'm like, who is that? And she described me, and I'm like, oh, that's my brother-in-law who passed away. And she talked about blue, and his favorite color was blue. He had a blue Cadillac. He liked the Dallas Cowboys, and he was always wearing blue. And um, but he says, I need him to tell my daughter something, and which is my niece. And he says, said something about flowers, but what I really remember was tell her to look out for blue jays in the backyard. And I didn't understand, okay, Blue Jays. So that doesn't make sense until things start to happen, right? And then my father comes and she talks about my dad and his stuttering and his fingers. He got sliced in the fingers. They were kind of weird looking, and he's stuttering a lot. And he was a jokester, and she was trying to keep up with the way he was talking because he talks fast and he's stuttering. And yeah, she just mentioned, and I just felt like a divine healing from that reading. My eyes are crying. I'm crying, and yeah, I just feel like this healing take place through this reading. And then 30 days later, I happen to go back to LA to visit my family, but I'm at Benihana's, and my niece texts me and she says, she sends me all these pictures, and there's several pictures of different Blue Jays. And to grow up, like we're not in the nature, we're not in Ohio, you know, it's we're in the concrete jungle where I come from, and there is no like a lot of nature unless you go to the coast where the beaches are. But yeah, blue jays started to pop up. She had several pictures of blue jays pop up, and I thought that
Love
was
that.
beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. I interviewed a lady, a beautiful lady, about when her son had passed, and she had never seen bluebirds where she lived. And all of a sudden, bluebirds appeared everywhere. So it was a really special story. Boo Boo, I haven't had a bluebird here at my house in the 4 years that I've lived here. The next day after interviewing her, I got swarmed with over a dozen bluebirds that were in the yard. And I just felt like it was a little thank you for the son, from the son, for interviewing mom and telling the story. Those in the
Yeah.
afterlife work some wonderful ways. So there is a lot of comfort and healing that can come from a good medium reading. Are you still in communication with your mom? Is she around?
Yeah, and one thing I learned is that the world doesn't have to change for me to be okay. I do, and shifting my perception and really having a deeper understanding and letting her be who she is, and that's her own soul journey. And I could respect that. I respect everyone's beliefs, and even if I don't agree with them, I could live and let live. And my mother, she's doing okay. Do I wish she would make changes? Yes, but at the same time, that's not my job. My mom's just let her have her experience, and I can love her for who she is.
Those are some powerful words because I think many of us have relationships that are not exactly the way we wish them to be. And we have to respect people's journeys. People hear me say this a lot on this show, but I'm going to say it again. A wise soul told me that relationships can be like circles, on the bottom, they come apart, but eventually they'll come back together. And I can't say if it's going to be in this life or in the hereafter, but I think we can learn from every person that's been put in our path. And everything that we learn in life is a gift and wisdom that we can share to help our fellow traveler on this journey called life. And never discount yourself. How about your own family and your children? Do you have a relationship with them, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, I have a really good relationship with my family and my children.
Excellent.
I it was a process. It took time, but practice. Like just like I'm, applying these principles on my daily activity. Same thing with being a parent. Same thing with being an uncle or a family member, and so on. A loved one. Yeah, yeah. It takes practice, and but I'm willing to take responsibility for my life today. And going back to my awakening, it's hard to have an awakening and not want to be more helpful to humanity. I find it impossible not to, in my experience. And something like that St. Francis prayer is only by dying that one awakens to eternal life. Something died in me. Or you hear that scripture from Jesus, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Pure in heart for me means all those layers of false identities that made me like in that kept me in conscious separation from you to me. All that stuff went away. And now I love people for who they are. I don't have to judge people because of their spacesuit or their belief systems or and so on. I know we're all one. We all belong to source. We all come from the same place. Like you hear it in Christianity, they'll say we're all God's children, meaning we're all family. Or enlightenment for the wave is a realization you are water, not the wave. We're just all having different experiences, but we're all water. We're all a part of the ocean of spirit.
My goodness, have you really taken on learning and exploring? You've got some wonderful quotes. Thank you for that. Tell us more about the afterlife, maybe some favorite guests or mediums or stories. What have you heard?
Your life. I like Penagore. Peter Penagore. He talks about his near-death experience, and he gives it one of the like for me one of the best near life reviews. But what I really love about Peter is he really confirmed a lot of stuff I was experiencing, and I really what I loved about him and his near-death experience story and his spirituality and his whole path is we line up pretty darn close to each other as far as mysticism and the esoteric teachings and just the way he looks at his worldview. I think we're in tune to the same stuff, and Peter's been they're coming out with the movie about his near death experience, and he wrote a book on it, and he's he was a theologian for many years, and now he considers himself just a mystic, moved away from religion and kind of just more open. And I just feel really in tune with him. So when I first interviewed him, I think I really felt like I don't believe that there is that we die. I know we don't die. I know we don't die. There's no doubt in my mind that we don't die. But the beautiful part about experiencing a loved one's death is that you can grieve and you can love, and it just shows how much you love them, and it shows the power of love, and how much we appreciate this experience and our relationship with others. So even though we like deep down inside we know that there's no death, we still grieve, and I think it's a beautiful process of grieving, even though it's so painful at the same time. And today I can look at my loved ones and I can grieve. And it's okay to grieve and it's okay to cry, but deep down inside, I know there's no death. We don't die. And I could just appreciate the experience with the loved one. But he gave me a lot of confirmation through his near death experiences in his own spiritual journey. Yeah, he was awesome. And Nicole Lindy's another. She's a medium and she's really good. She recently helped a cousin of mine and my mother. My mother's boyfriend passed away, and She was telling him stuff that only them two knew, and and it made my mother a believer of the afterlife. She now knows that we don't die, because she was a skeptic. She didn't believe in that stuff, but when she got that reading from Nicole Lindy, it changed her life, and she's still living the way she's living. But I know deep down inside, part of her change. She knows there's no such thing as death after that reading.
A good medium reading can change your life. It really can. In a good reading, you actually feel the presence of the other person by what they're sharing, and it can be incredible, really incredible. Wow. How about other favorite guests? Tie in maybe some of the spiritual beliefs that you found, and this is some maybe some highlights from Broader Lens podcast. If something's coming to mind, we have people here. Yes, we want to hear evidence for the afterlife. We do, but how do we live life? Life's tough, right? What does it all mean? Why are we here? So if there's any of that wisdom that you've received, bring it on.
Well, there's a lot of guests. I can't think of them. There's so many.
That's okay.
I'm so worried about next week, but I just had Nancy Timms, and she's had encounters, and but she's been very enlightened. I love that, even though some people do not believe in aliens and encounters, she really had she comes from the South too, or Midwest, and she's very, very spiritual, very, and a lot of times you hear about having these ET encounters, and it being negative, but she talks about having kundalini awakening, getting downloads, and she's very in tune with like just the oneness of life and humanity, and she cares about human beings and trying to help uplift the collective consciousness. So I just had her on, and I really appreciated her experiences and her life journey along with her sons. I that her People could doubt about her abductions, but she's definitely in tune with like love, and having more compassion and being a better human being. So
I think 100% that out of every conversation, people can get good stuff, right? You don't have to agree with everything a guest says, but look for the gold in for you. I think there is a truth, but it's our truth. I don't think there's a person out there that says this is the way it is. And so not everybody's going to relate to my story. Not everybody's going to relate to your story. Somebody might love hearing about aliens, right? That might be their thing. But within every person, they're looking for their truth. They're looking for that makes a difference. And I think we need to have those different voices. And speaking of different voices, talk a little bit about the different kinds of guests you have, because gosh, you're so varied. And is there like a common thread that you like to engage your guests with? Is there something you want to get out of them? Because, like you said, you just talked to somebody about aliens. You talk to me about life after death. You're talking to Marianne Williamson, Neil Donald Walsh, and so many others. Talk about that range of what you're interested in.
I'm interested in the paranormal, the afterlife. I love near-death experiences. I talk about addiction, trauma, past life trauma, ancestral trauma. Learning more about epigenetics, and just spiritual awakenings and readings. Psychics, channelers, and so on. Ancient history. I love to learn things that interest me, and hopefully people can get stuff out of it. I had a couple people from Gaia on Ancient Aliens. I think she was one of my favorites. Melissa Till, and she's a producer. She just came out with the new movie with Joe Dispenza called Source. But she came out with another movie before that called Code 12, and she created Ancient Aliens, Ancient Civilizations. So we got to talk a lot about stuff with the Gnostics, the Gnostic Christians, and just engaging and being able to talk to them. And who else had Lama Choga? He's a Tibetan Buddhist monk, and just getting his insight, and talking about the hungry ghost, and connecting that with addiction, and just learning about his spirituality, his own path, and how open minded he gets to be in Buddhism. And what I love to is when I interview people is I don't have to agree with everybody, but I can respect their own truth. I don't think there's one full-on truth. I think everyone has different truths. But and I could love and respect their truths and grab a little chunk of their truth and put it in my heart, but yeah, what's fascinating for me right now is the entity attachments. I'm really trying to learn more about that. Entity attachments and Kate Montana. She wrote "Cracking the Matrix," and I had them both together, and we're talking about entity attachments. So I thought that was interesting. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
Doctor. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, just keep following your passions. And I think as souls having a human experience, our beliefs change. When I first got into this and what I believed is some of it's still there and some of it I'm looking at a bigger picture, and I can understand how the younger me thought certain things were real. And our truth is our truth, and our truth might change, but that which empowers each and every one of us and gives us life. And when we can wake up in the morning and be excited about something and then make a difference with another person, we got to follow that. And this life is a giant buffet of different
Yeah,
experiences. It's not one size fits all. Thank goodness, because life would be very boring if it was.
you're right. And if you picture everyone in a bubble or a box, and there's groups of people in one box and groups of people in another box, and look at many boxes: the political box, car clubs, races, and belief systems, and 12-step communities, and all these different boxes. Well, sometimes like I'm able to just be outside of the boxes and look at it at a broader lens. That's kind of like the way I named it, broader lens, because I could see people trapped in boxes arguing over the boxes and the belief systems, and it's all nonsense because when you go past that and look at everything in a broader lens, we're all the
I
same. We're all
love
one.
that. I love that. Wow, you
Yeah.
are awfully wise for a young man. Awfully wise. My goodness. And I hear there's a book in your thoughts, right? Gonna write a book or in the process of?
I'm in the process of writing a book. It's called Awakening Within, and I'm kind of like I'm writing a book about my life and my alcoholism, my alcohol addiction, and about my experience with the 12-step community. I'm also challenging it to grow and to look at new ways of understanding on addiction and the mind and body and epigenetics and neuroscience, and bringing in, like, trying to show teachings of new research of doctors and stuff, because a lot of, and I love the 12 steps, I'm not talking about it, but it's outdated. It was written in 1939, and a lot of the science is outdated. Principles are beautiful, they're always going to work, but just giving more new information to help us carry the message more effectively in 2024.
I love that. I really
Yeah.
do. Well, keep us posted on that. Talk a little bit about epigenetics, because I think I know what that is, but I haven't ever really plugged myself into research that. I'm just
well
curious,
i'm
and then we'll wrap it up.
well, I'm still learning myself, so I'm not like a pro in knowing
No,
about
that's okay.
epigenetics, but we can inherit stuff from our ancestors, but it's our perception that turns on and off our gene expression. So, like in the 12-step community, you hear that we have an alcoholic gene. There's no such thing as an alcoholic gene, but we can change our gene expression by our perception, our environment, our inner and outer environment, our relationship with our environment can turn on and off our gene expression.
Which tells me I know I'm a different Sandra in different groups that I'm in. You catch me on our Sunday gathering or an interview, right? You get me. I've got people in my life that don't buy into the afterlife, so I don't talk about it, right? Or if I'm with children or who knows. So we can become who we're around and vice versa. So I think it's important that we do our best to be who we are and be fully self-expressed. And it's okay if people don't believe in what we do, but we should never be squelched. You should still always be able to share. Don't push on people. I'm sure you've figured that out, that people don't like it. But I think there comes a time where people start asking questions about the broader lens, the bigger picture. And that's the time that it's like, yeah, let me share with you what I know. Boo Boo, what do you want to leave our guests with, our listeners and viewers? You're the guest with today.
I learned about, the deepest part about being an alcoholic is being human being. And, and the deepest part about being human being is my oneness with source, with life, with God. And the deepest part about that oneness is being able to love and express that love. And I think that's my mission today, is just to try to be more loving and more kind and be a part of the solution in today's world. And we live in a world that's us against them. And if you don't think like me, you're against me, and all that's mumble jumble. But I just try to. I think the biggest minority in today's world has nothing to do with skin color. It's authenticity, and just trying to, be myself, and allow other people to be themselves. So I think the biggest message today is um, just trying to be more mindful. Malcolm X once says, "When you remove the I and replace it with the we, that illness becomes wellness." We're suffering right now because we're in that conscious separation. We're in too much in the I, and it's creating all kinds of illnesses. Whether it's addiction to mental health, and workaholic and so on. But when you live on a spiritual basis, you can tap into the I within the I, and everything else changes from there.
Loving kindness and be part of the solution. Thank you so much for being our guest. And how can people digest Broader Lens podcast? I know you're on YouTube, but I think you're also on some of the audio podcast apps as well.
Yeah, I just go to Buzzsprout and I tap into, I forgot which boxes I'm in. I don't even pay attention, to be honest, but I am on Spotify. I know that. You can find me on Instagram. But I really focus on YouTube right now. But I am in other platforms. I don't know them all by heart, but I am on Spotify, and you can find me on YouTube. I'm really focusing on YouTube right now.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the easiest way, I think.
Yeah.
But for people that like to travel and listen, Spotify would be the one. Well, I want to thank you for being our guest today.
Thank you.
I'm just left speechless, really, and that never happens. Your story really, I know I said this earlier, but it's one of inspiration. It is hitting rock bottom, and talk about a 180. You are a giver. You truly, truly are. And I know when you interview Neil Donald Walsh, he has quite a story too, and for anybody listening or watching right now, you may be going through that dark night of the soul, that tough, tough, tough time. And just have that faith that it might be a year down the road or even 10 years. You never know. But those things that happen really are maybe the thing to give you that spiritual growth or give you that knowledge so that you're able to help another person on their journey. And I think, and I know Boo Boo agrees, that it's all about being of service and helping our fellow travelers. So if you're in a tough space, just hang on. You're not alone. You're surrounded by loved ones. Reach out to myself and reach out to Boo Boo through uh, Broader Lens podcast. There's so many good episodes. I know sometimes you just pick something random, and it's not really random because it's just the thing you need to hear. So with that, what do I need to say? Okay, Broader Lens podcast. Go search for it on YouTube, Spotify if you want to listen. And as a reminder, my home base is wedon'tdie.com. We have lots of good upcoming things. I talk about the medium classes we have, and some people think, oh, I don't want to be a medium, Sandra. Well, you don't ever have to be a medium. The thing is in the privacy of those breakout rooms, once you learn how your soul communicates, you know who you work with, right? Your loved ones. So you might be in a breakout room, and we start off learning how our psychic sense works because that is the basis of all communication. And you do readings on people on Zoom in these breakout rooms. And then once you get comfortable with how your soul receives and communicates, you move on to working with a soul that's no longer walking this earth, and that's mediumship. And so it's so beautiful that you work with your loved ones and you do readings on each other, and it's so amazing because once all of a sudden you think it's your imagination, and somebody can validate, no, you're really talking about my loved one. You start realizing you are a soul having a human experience. You are so much more than you know yourself to be. It's magical. It really is. So that's why I say, so come join one of our classes. We also have our free Sunday gathering, 2 o'clock New York time every Sunday. They're all recorded. There's a medium demonstration included. And my goal on each and every one is that you leave with a smile on your face, you're inspired about the week ahead, and that you know you're never alone and that your loved ones are with you. So that's all at wedon'tdie.com. So in closing, I'm Sandra Champlain. It's always been my privilege and honor to be your host on We Don't Die Radio. I do believe that life is an education for the soul and that your life here is important. So be loving, be kind, and be part of the solution. Go check out Broader Lens Podcast and visit me at wedon'tdie.com. So thank you for listening or for watching, and we'll see you again soon.